Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're exploring a set of sources that are, well, pretty central if you want to build on a specific platform. We're talking about the Ontology Developer Center documentation.
Right, think of it as the official starting point, the guide map, specifically written for developers.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is really to cut through some of the technical jargon, unpack what ontology is actually about at a high level.
Yeah, get a handle on the core ideas they're pushing in this material.
And also see what practical resources are really there for developers who might want to jump in and build something.
Makes sense?
Okay, let's unpack this documentation and see what we can learn about building on ontology.
Let's do it.
So, right near the start, the source gives us this sort of foundational definition. It describes ontology as a, quote, next-gen network of public blockchains and a distributed, trust-based collaboration platform.
Mm-hmm.
It also mentions built-in support for, the usual suspects like ledger accounts and smart contracts.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating there, I think, is that immediate emphasis on trust-based collaboration.
Right.
Because, in the world of decentralized tech, maybe the biggest challenge is establishing trust without relying on some central company or authority.
Sure.
So that phrasing really signals ontology's core aim.
Yeah.
It feels like they're not just building another blockchain, they're trying to build a foundation, a platform, where people, applications, things can interact securely.
Even if they don't know each other beforehand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Without needing to trust each other personally. And they mention it supports their own public chains and chains built by applications using their framework. That points to a kind of network vision.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, for me anyway. The source specifically calls out two modules as, fundamental, universal building blocks, they say.
Ah, you mean the DID and DDXF?
Yes, the Distributed Identity Framework, DID, and the Distributed Data Exchange Framework, DDXF. They put those right up front.
And they break those down, listing components under them, which, tells you a lot about their priorities.
Like what?
Well, under D, you see ONTID and verifiable credentials. Now, ONTID is basically Ontology's own take on a decentralized identifier. Your digital self on their network, kind of.
Okay.
And verifiable credentials, these are really key. It's a way to cryptographically prove certain facts, things about yourself, or maybe about a product, like I'm over 18, or I have this qualification, or this component is genuine.
Without showing your entire driver's license or certificate.
Precisely, without needing one central place to issue it, and without revealing more info than necessary.
So why is that fundamental, like they say?
Well, think about it. Building trust online, it really starts with knowing who or what you're interacting with, or at least being able to verify essential things about them securely.
Right, identity verification.
Yeah. And then DDXF, the Distributed Data Exchange Framework, it sort of builds on that. It provides a system for securely sharing or maybe trading data, possibly based on those verified identities or credentials.
Ah, I see. So they're saying identity and data exchange aren't just features, they're like the absolute bedrock for building any kind of trusted collaboration on their platform.
That's how it reads, yeah. That makes sense.
So what kind of actual problems does having those two pieces solve together?
Exactly. Think about needing to prove your age online constantly without flashing your passport details everywhere.
Yeah, or sharing specific medical records with just one doctor securely?
Right. Or proving your professional qualifications to a potential employer, all without some single giant company holding every scrap of your sensitive data.
Okay, got it.
DDXF gives you the secure, permissioned way to share the related data. It's pretty essential for enabling things like, DeFi, secure supply chains, data marketplaces.
Anywhere trust and privacy around who you are and what data you're sharing is critical.
Exactly. And the documentation, it lists very specific technical bits and pieces for developers under these headings, showing they're providing the low-level tools needed to actually implement this stuff.
Okay, so moving on from those, let's call them core concepts, the Documentation Center itself, it's presented as the main guide for developers, right? A place to explore and understand all the different resources available.
Yeah, it's clear they've put quite a bit of effort into developer support. It looks pretty comprehensive.
And looking through it, you see they group these resources. There are categories like decentralized identity and data, which we just talked about. Then ontology elements, which covers the core tech like smart contracts, token protocols, consensus mechanisms, Oracle services.
Standard blockchain components.
Right. Then there are guides and tutorials, info on running an ontology node, and a really big section just called developer tools.
Yes. And the sheer breadth of those tools is what really stands out. Instead of just listing, every single tool name.
Yeah.
Let's think about the types of tools they offer and what that signals, right? They offer SDKs, software development kits for popular programming languages.
Which is crucial.
Absolutely crucial. That's how developers actually build the front-end apps or back-end systems that talk to the blockchain.
Okay, what else?
They list a whole range of APIs, HTTP, WebSocket, RPC, Explore APIs, plus specific ones for their native tokens and ONTID.
And APIs are basically the doorways for developers to talk to the blockchain. Get data, send transactions.
Pretty much, yeah. Different types of doors for different needs. Simple web requests, real-time data feeds, deep blockchain interaction. Having that variety means developers can integrate Ontology in the way that best suits their application.
Makes sense.
And they also make a point of highlighting support for different smart contract environments. EVM, NeoVM, WASM.
Why is it significant?
Well, developers come from different ecosystems, right? If
Yeah.
you're used to building on Ethereum, which uses the EVM, or maybe Neo with NeoVM, or if you're forward-looking with WebAssembly, WASM, they're trying to meet you where you are, lower the barrier to entry.
So you don't have to learn a whole new system from scratch necessarily.
Exactly. Combine that with tools like their Punica CLI, that's a command line interface for development, or a signing server to help manage transaction signing securely. It really paints a picture of a comprehensive ecosystem.
Right. Designed to make it easier, regardless of what kind of dApp you're building or what tech stack you prefer.
Seems to be the goal.
So that whole suite of tools, it feels like the practical side of things. They give you the identity and data building blocks we talked about.
Yeah, the DID and DDXF.
And then they provide all these tools to actually use those blocks in lots of different ways.
That's a good way to put it.
Now, tucked away in the documentation, there was this specific technical detail that kind of jumped out at me.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
A mention of an upcoming upgrade of Ontology mainnet at the block height of 100 992 1,000. And it says this upgrade will introduce EVM compatibility and the token decimal upgrade.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that detail, even though it sounds technical, is actually quite significant.
Why so?
EVM, the Ethereum virtual machine. It's arguably the most widely used standard for smart contracts in the whole blockchain space.
Right. Loads of developers know it.
Exactly. So introducing EVM compatibility. That's a major strategic move. It means all those developers familiar with the Ethereum ecosystem, the tools, languages like Solidity, they can potentially port their existing apps or build new ones directly on Ontology much more easily.
So it massively expands their potential developer pool.
Dramatically. And it boosts possibilities for interoperability, too. It shows they're serious about connecting with the broader blockchain world, not just staying in their own silo.
Okay, that makes sense. So kind of putting this all together, what does this documentation and the things that it emphasizes, what does it all mean for you, the listener?
Yeah.
Especially if you're interested in developing on the platforms like this or just understanding them better.
Well, I think it paints a very clear picture. Ontology, at least as presented here for developers, is positioning itself as a platform focused squarely on building trusted, decentralized applications.
Right, that trust word again.
Yeah, but the key is that this trust isn't meant to come from a central company, but from these foundational technical pieces like distributed identity, the DID, ONTID, verifiable credentials, and the distributed data exchange, DDXF.
Core building block.
The core building blocks for trust. And crucially, they seem to be backing that vision up with a really wide and varied array of practical tools, guides, SDKs, APIs.
The whole toolkit.
The whole toolkit, exactly. Designed to support developers working with different technologies, different parts of the application stack. It feels like they're not just offering the base layer, they're trying to provide everything needed to build robust applications centered around identity and data.
Okay, so just to quickly recap what we've dug into in this deep dive. Okay. We looked at how the Ontology documentation introduces the platform's focus on trust and collaboration.
That core mission.
We highlighted the foundational role they give to DDID and DDXF as the building blocks for that trust.
Identity and data exchange being key.
We looked at the really comprehensive suite of developer resources that they list tools, guides, APIs.
Showing practical support.
And we noted that upcoming EVM compatibility as a potentially significant strategic move.
Yeah, opening the doors wider.
So, for a final thought.
Okay, well, if you look even closer at the documentation, you'll notice it actually lists even more specialized components. Things mentioned like Mercury, Oscore, a DDXF marketplace, governance APIs. Lots of specific pieces.
Right, which build on those core ideas.
Exactly. They build on the core DID and DDXF. So given Ontology's stated mission as this trust-based collaboration platform, and seeing this deep list of technical modules and developer tools, all centered around identity and data, here's something to maybe chew on.
Go on.
What specific, maybe complex, real-world problems does this particular combination, the foundational identity and data concepts, plus this extensive specialized toolkit, what does it uniquely empower developers to actually solve? Think about areas like digital identity verification, secure data markets, managing verifiable credentials for skills or products. What kind of really transformative applications become possible only when you have all these specific pieces integrated and available in one place? What hard problems does this let developers tackle?
Interesting question to ponder. What becomes uniquely possible?
Yeah.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.